start with a round of introductions, and I'll pass the mic, and I'll let our panelists to introduce themselves.
Hello, thank you. My name is Jerome, and I'm a part of the DevCon community, and I'm also a recovering Flash developer for those in the room that are from that era. Currently, I'm a senior solution engineer for Unity. Unity, that was mentioned a bit earlier. We are a game engine mostly, but we also have industrial use cases. So I'm on the non-game side of things, working with industrial customers to adopt the technology and services that we have. And we also use a lot of AI for various parts of our business, including our ad network, for example, that's driven by AI. We have a matchmaker service that matches games with players, allows you to acquire players for your IP. So that's also driven by AI. And we are releasing a slew of tools. So I'm really happy to be here tonight and maybe discuss a little bit further what we are going to offer soon. It's in an open beta, private beta, sorry. So you can sign up on the website, and I'll make sure to communicate to the meetup the info, specifically around generative AI and assistance, so co-piloting your user journey with Unity. Yeah, that's me.
Hello, I'm Drew Wilkins. I'm one of the founders and owners of Fish in a Bottle, and my job role is Head of Games and Education. So we are Unity developers, so we use Unity in some of our games development, and we use HTML5 as well. And my day-to-day job, where I'm using generative AI, is very much ChatGPT and GPT-4 related. So I'm responsible for producing kind of the pitch documents, tender documents, and having a look through kind of all of the data that's been given to us in the brief. And I reckon currently ChatGPT has probably quadrupled my output in terms of what I'm able to respond to. As an organization, we've been going about 20 years, which makes us pretty old. We are Flash developers originally, so we did 10 years of Flash development before Shift. Yeah, woohoo! Oh, I miss you, Flash. And then kind of shifted over to HTML5. So we work with people like BBC, so we produce BBC bite-sized content, producing the games that they're teaching kids. So we're kind of primarily focused on education, but we use a bit of entertainment as well in there. So we've done a bit of Danger Mouse and Mickey Mouse, and we might be mouse oriented. Don't know. Anyway, Tim.
Thanks. I'm Tim Ki-Kydd. I'm the creative lead at Fish in a Bottle. I work with Drew for my sins. So I do the creative side of the business. I used to get away with colouring in for a living, and now they make me pretend to be a grown up and do all sorts of responsible things, taking control of kind of all the creative side of planning, really managing all the kind of technology we use on that side of the business, and kind of really realising client visions for the people we work with. That's fun.
Hey everyone, I'm Omar. I used to be a creative strategist at Meta for the last 15 years. I've worked in advertising last 13 years. Last 2 years, I've really been focusing on generative AI for the creative industries, and very much from a creative standpoint. I don't code, so please don't throw anything at me. I feel really out of place here. But it's really interesting because as a creative person and working sort of like commercially and culturally, it's been really interesting to sort of like see just how many ideas that have been like trapped behind doors have been unlocked by generative AI, all the way from large language models to text to video, text to image, and everything else in between. And for me, the most exciting thing right now that I'm doing is looking at AI agents and AGI agents and how that can work in the creative space. So, yeah, that's me. Thanks. Amazing.
I am Sean, and I work here at Makers. I run all our engineering leadership programs. I have a background as an engineer, and I actually retrained also at Makers. So I describe myself as the prodigal son. I did the boot camp years ago. Before that, I had a career in the arts, a fleeting career as an artist with some shows around the place. It doesn't make any money. Someone else mentioned that earlier too. So retrained as an engineer, had a kind of a career as an engineer, and then moved into leadership. And now I kind of look after a growing set of programs, helping kind of technical people move into leadership roles.
I'd actually start with Omar, because he is not the developer here. I've seen some amazing things that you have on your Instagram channel. You've mentioned AGI.
Yeah.
You've mentioned the auto AGI that your baby AGI that you're trying to build. I would like to know, starting from you, what's the day-to-day changes to the work that you're doing, like in production.
Yeah.
Both how you use it and how you're seeing the process accelerating, particularly in the past probably year or.
Yeah, sure. So as I said, I left Meta a little while ago, and since I left, all I've been doing is working for myself and working directly with clients. So I'll give you the most recent example is I just did a music video for a band, and normally that can take up to 20, 30 different people and run in a very different way, where at the end of the process, you'll have one film. And what I've been able to do is generate film along with the band and the client almost every day. So it's really uncoupled and really, it's uncoupled time versus creative output. And that is just phenomenal. Like, not only from making cultural things like music videos, but then everything in between. I'm talking about pitch decks. I'm talking about using ChatGPT to argue with producers about budgets and stuff like that. Like, all of the things that I don't want to do, I just outsource to my own. Yeah, it's a version of Super AGI, which I call Alan, by the way. Alan is amazing, and Alan literally does like most things for me. And people, when they ask me about Alan, they're like, "Oh, is it Alan Turing?" And I'm like, "It's Alan Partridge, actually." He's like, it's the best thing ever, because like I gave, as soon as I found out that you could fine tune a GPT model, I gave it all of my prompts. That's like 2 years worth of prompts, and then I was like, "Hey, can you write better prompts than I can?" And it started like using this language, which I later realized is something called hexadecimal. I don't know what that is. And also start using emojis, which I again have no idea why I was doing that. So for me, as a creative, like, I don't care like what's going on behind the curtain. I just love it that I can just make the craziest things I can.
Does it empower a non-developer creating this type of things quickly and from a developer point?
Absolutely. I was saying to someone before, like I said, I have like no coding skill, or it just like freaks me out. Like, it makes my dyslexia go really weird. But what's really interesting about it is like now with things like, I can code pretty much anything I desire. Like I was trying to sort of like, so the last thing that I just made was a script that could track my face and it could measure my emotions, right? And that was connected to Stable Diffusion. So when it saw I was happy, it would make something that would make me sad. And then it would do, like, if it saw me sad, it would make me happy to try to equalize my mood. Now, like I would never have been able to make that. I don't even understand how face tracking works. I know that I could just ask for it and go, here's the GitHub that I found on Google. Like, can you connect to that? And can you do this? And can you just do all of that bit for me? Because I want to get to the fun bit. And that's it.
I see from these guys at Fish and Morsel, I've seen some visuals, and I know that we have discussed this a while ago, but enabling the kind of the pitch face and making it fast and increasing vision. So before you call the big guns and start coding, right? So is this the approach that you were following? If you want me to.
Yeah, you can do. So got a little example. Yeah, so this is basically a piece of concept art that we created using Midjourney mostly. So we've tended to use AI at the very early stages of development. It's a little bit too unpredictable and inconsistent to really get into the production phase at this point. But it is really useful for generating ideas and kind of pushing the boundaries of what you might think is your creative limits and kind of challenging your own predispositions. So what we've done here is we had a client who was looking to have an international product have appeared across multiple nations for educating children, basically. So we kind of knew that we wanted to go down the route of using forest sprites, because that avoids kind of problems that you can have with human-based characters of kind of representation of skin tone, of cultural diversity. By making them kind of furry and cute, it means you've got some kind of universal appeal. So what we did is fed all the kind of the ideas and basic kind of thoughts that we'd had about the project into Midjourney, and then see what it spits back at us. and that kind of allows us to get a kind of basic foot in the door, and then we can refine away from there. And we do that by kind of engineering our prompts, kind of refining what we want to get out of it to change the style, change the look of things. And how we got to this image is we kind of started off, we generated a basic background, and then we kind of generate characters separately. And what we're doing is kind of basically like a photo bashing process. I don't know how familiar you guys would be with that. It's kind of a concept art method whereby you kind of pull a series of different images together and then paint over and mash them up basically to make a final image. So what we're doing, rather than kind of traditionally you pull together photos, we're actually using Midjourney to kind of develop or generate particular assets we want. So we kind of developed particular characters and worked those up until we got the kind of look that we wanted. And then we kind of pulled them all together into one image, and I painted over that myself to kind of then unify that into a single image and kind of get the depth and the lighting and all those kind of things together. But to create something like this from scratch, it would have originally taken probably about 40 hours or so. To do this image, it took about 4. So just massive time savings. And that's only going to get a lot faster as the kind of the tools improve.
I know that Unity is still experimenting with or kind of introducing this process in the production of the platform. So if you can give an overview of what we normally say with it.
Yes. So I was super excited because you asked me to come, and I was like, oh, we have so much stuff. And then I realized that nothing was released publicly, so it was a bit disappointing. Thankfully, 2 weeks ago, we announced pretty much our intent. So there's a few tools that are coming to the Unity ecosystem. The first one is Muse. Muse, the idea is the muse, the inspiration, but it's really, so let's rewind. About 8 billion people on the planet. Historically, 8 million people have used Unity, so it's already a big differential. Out of those 8 million that have used Unity, only 1.8 million use it monthly. So we lose a lot of people on the way, or we don't address a lot of people. And our motto is the world is a better place with more creators, so we want more creators in that world, right? The issue is most people download the Unity editor. If you haven't used it, it's a big piece of software. It's very intimidating. There's C# to be learned. There's a lot of basically hurdles for you to, act on your creative desires. So Muse is here to coach you, to train you, to help you on your journey by suggesting code, suggesting workflows, basically prompting using ChatGPT, natural language model, and help you, be better with Unity, but also suggest code that, I had to look up many times because I forget. And now it's going to be integrated, first of all, in Muse, which is going to be a web-based prompt, but then obviously going to be integrated within the editor. So that's the first step. Then we showed in the video, we don't have names for them yet. So it's much like Midjourney or basically image generation, material generation for textures. So textures on 3D models, they're a pain to create. You test libraries, but you need to license them. Also, you don't necessarily know what you want. So, give me a brick texture, and then this tool will generate you a brick texture that you can use in your game. And the idea here is this training on our data. We own the IP so that we can guarantee that when you use it in your IP and commercial projects, you won't get sued down the line because we, data mined open source data, which is not for us to use commercially. So everything that we do at Unity will be geared towards creators being able to use that content, obviously, in their IP down the line. So and then we're going to have also a sprite generation tool. Sprites are 2D images that you use in games. 2D games are very popular. With Sprite, we have a whole very complex sprite system. And you're going to be able to basically sketch. I want a cow, sketch, a little out of the cow. It's going to give you a cow. Then you can go through permutations and help generate assets like this to get started quickly. And then you can also do style transfer, etc. So these are the tools that we're trying to have in the pipeline. And then I'm going to go on for one more minute. There's a library which gets me super excited. It's called Sentis. It used to be called Barracuda, which is an open source project available on GitHub by Unity. But Sentis is the evolution of this. It's a cross-platform neural network engine that allows you to basically use your train neural networks on device. And that's super exciting because most people create applications. You don't want necessarily to ping the cloud for every single request that you have for an NPC, for example, for dialogue, or to be able to do dynamic generation of content using your neural network. So Sentis takes Onyx files, which is an exchange format for trained neural networks, and runs that locally on your device. You can accelerate on the GPU. You can use it as a pixel shader, as a buffer, compute buffer. There's whole slew of options, and that's going to allow you to have those complex models come in your applications and your users to interact with them on your game, on your experience, wherever you use Unity. So that's for me the most exciting part. And then last thing is ethical data is a big topic, and private data also. So a lot of our customers are using Unity to generate data sets, synthetic data, in order to train algorithms. So, recognize people in the street with an autonomous vehicle. You can go out and video people, but then you need to anonymize those frames, which means the algorithm is going to learn on blurry faces. So it's not really great to detect humans. Also, it's very localized, so it's not global, right? We are all very different, specifically, in various geolocations. So people use Unity to generate synthetic data to make sure that it's ethical, it's balanced, and reflects, the complexities of the world. That's some of the efforts.
Yeah, thanks. I'll come back to the hit pause for a moment on the ethical side, because I have a question for you, Sean, specifically. But I would like to ask Drew here.
Yeah.
You and connecting with both what Tim and Jerome has said, you're from the kind of ex-Flash developer point of view, like current JavaScript developer, or doing a little bit of development. You get the results of these pipelines, so like the creative pipeline, and you have to put them together normally in a development environment that is becoming smarter, hopefully. At the moment, the tools that we have available, though, are, from my point of view, quite limited. I've tried Copilot for a while, and then I disabled it because it was really annoying. What's your point of view? It's true.
Yeah, I mean, so you're right. At the moment, from a tool set point of view, we're kind of playing around with the stuff that's out there. Shouldn't gesticulate with the water. Top tip. Yeah, so we're playing around with the tools that are out there, but I think probably the next step forward is going to be seeing AI being integrated into the tool set that we're already using, exactly what Unity have just done. We're starting to see that come through, and we're going to see that more in things like the Office platform. Copilot will hopefully get better.
The problem with Copilot is that it has a limited vision on the code base. It's just seems like it's looking at one file mostly, right, and giving you examples from Stack Overflow mostly.
And this is kind of the problem we've got with the AI models out there at the moment. You'll see it with ChatGPT as well. You've got a really limited amount of data that you can feed into it, that you've got control of, and it forgets stuff. It makes up so much shit. God damn. I mean, it's made my life so much easier, so I'm always polite to it when it's around, just in case it takes over. But
There will be a question.
Yeah, but it really does lie, and you've got to watch it. So when I'm using it from a text point of view, you have to check through everything really carefully at what it's doing. But I think we're going to see those tools start being integrated in a much more useful way. So as soon at the moment, I'm having to cut and paste stuff around, and you can't feed a PDF in, and so you're trying to convert PDFs to text to put a brief in, and so it's going to get much easier. But yeah, we're using different tools internally.
In terms of taking over, I had Copilot suggesting me a key from a dictionary that didn't exist. So that's their way of taking power, basically.
It had me convinced. I was like, did we write that? I had to go back and check what our notes were. And we say, no, we didn't. Lying again.
So I'll give it to Sean, because we mentioned the ethical side of it. I know that Makers is doing something for learning, correct me if I'm wrong. And we mentioned in the previous session that academic institutions are kind of super scared at the moment because there are problems related to ownership of data is used for training, ownership of the data that is created as an output of generative models, and you essentially don't know how this data is going to be used or applied? Is it something that you have an opinion?
Yeah, I think so. So there's a few kind of entry points for us with AI in the training that we do. The big one is the boot camp. So that's people kind of career switching, moving into junior roles. So they're learning how to code for the first time. And of course, they're the people that are in some ways most excited about using these tools. And previously, the challenge for us was Stack Overflow, right? Like, we want people to learn how to learn so they can go and be good engineers. And if you copy the wrong answer, or sometimes the wrong question from Stack Overflow, you're not learning how to do stuff. You're just kind of replicating other people's sometimes successes, sometimes mistakes. And that we're seeing like turbocharged with ChatGPT particularly. And some of our learners are using it well. So they're using it for through things like Copilot, or for syntax checking, or maybe for writing tests for their code, that kind of thing. Some are getting into this wild cycle where they something they write doesn't work, so they take it to ChatGPT, and it gives them like a really wild answer, and then they kind of try and mangle that into something else, and they come after maybe 10 iterations with this long kind of weird piece of code to a coach finally, and they're like, hey, I've made this thing. And we're like, that's not the right approach. And so from an ethical standpoint, what we're trying to do is give learners the right approach to this stuff to be able to think about it really well. Because someone mentioned like the human element of creative work, and I think that applies to engineering as well. Like the most successful junior engineers that leave our boot camp are the ones that think like problem solvers and like people and like humans in their teams, and have some kind of leadership aspects of the work they do, rather than the ones that can just write good code. So ethically, what we're trying to do is give learners like a really good foundation of how to think about generative AI, how to use it well. Of course, how to think about things like copyright and IP and those kinds of things, because what we're seeing is our some of the businesses that they go into are already very worried about their code being fed back into this machine, and who knows where it goes, of course. So yeah, for us, the kind of how we're tackling the ethical question is, how do we really enable them to think critically and think well about this thing through all the change?
So do you think there's still space for the traditional junior developer role?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Because for us, the traditional junior developer role is like 10% syntax and 90% person. 90% like team member, problem solver, creative thinker. Like, that's the value that you get from a junior developer. And actually we have 16 weeks to teach someone to code. So they don't leave with like a great deal of kind of hard technical knowledge, but they leave with the ability to learn how to do that well. So what we see is they fly upwards in organizations because of all that kind of human value that they bring. So in that sense, ChatGPT just like accelerates that.
Sorry, let me rephrase, but the role in 2 years, depending on how catastrophic it may be, but maybe in 3 months' time, in 6 or in 2 years, but they're not junior developers anymore. The job itself is different, is changing.
Yeah, definitely. So it's like a different suite of a kind of pick list of skills and abilities. But I think you'll still have people wanting to transition into a technical career, but the day-to-day tasks might be slightly different. So some of the things that they would traditionally have done will be done by a tool.
Omar, same question, but from the creative point of view. What is a junior creative role?
I think with the potentiality of like having every single part of the creative process be done by a machine or be augmented by a machine. So from writing pitch decks to brainstorming to coming up with scams to storyboarding to literally every single part. I don't know. It's going to be turbocharged. Like, will they be juniors, or will we have to invent the junior creative director or the junior creative entrepreneur, because it's a person who's responsible for a machine way smarter than, I mean, honest to God, like, I've never argued with a calculator, and that's already smarter than I am. So I'm not going to try to argue with a machine who can do most of the things I'd like to do faster than me. Like, it's really good at writing pitch decks. Like what you were saying before, I was really thinking about it, because I've also been writing pitch decks, but I've been trying I've been trying to convince Alan that it's like I gave it access to this author called Chris Voss, who's a FBI negotiator, and it sort of like picked up some of his like style of like convincing people how like, you know, why it needs to do a certain thing. So I've been using that in my pitch decks. Like, that's amazing. Like, I'm not as good as an FBI guy to convince you, but FBI guy is. So it's really interesting. So, you know, it is how laterally can you think with these tools? So will there be a junior creative? No, I really don't think there will. And where would a junior creative work? Like, are they going to be ad agencies? Are they going to be creative studios? Like, is it like, in my industry, people are super worried. They're like, oh my God, creatives, we're going to go. Like, there's not going to be any creatives anymore. And honest to God, I really think the first lot of people who are going to get replaced are clients, because a client is easy to replace. Like, they just give out briefs and then judge work. Like, that's literally it. Like, you buy clients. Like, hey, your CMO is going to get rid of all of your marketing department, and creative people are going to take briefs from an AI. That's amazing. Your AI talks to my AI. I'm going to go back to bed for a little while and see what happens. But, you know, it's going to really, really, and that's just like, you know, what I'm seeing and what I think is going to happen, because if I can do it, well, that's not that hard for anybody who's smart to do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. You all seem pretty relaxed of what's happening. It's amazing, because I'm not at all. So I would like you to convince me that we are not in front of a change of apocalyptic size, and that we're going to be enjoying our little piece of code or little kind of drawing or something like that. Want to take this?
I'll start.
Take it.
I think cautious optimism is probably my view on the whole subject. We've been down this road. We've been through, you know, evolution or revolution, starting with, for me, the internet, for example, where I shifted career because that thing sounded amazing. And a whole bunch of people were like, oh my God, this is the end of the world, right? So, you know, it's change is, you know, the only constant. Our environment change. I think the fact that what's a junior designer in 3 years is probably not the biggest problem we have right now as a, you know, society and species. You know, climate change, I would say. Let's start with this. You know, it's all finally working from home until, you know, the water rises, and then, you know, the computer is not going to work that great. So for me, I mean, there's one thing that we love at Unity is democratization, right? It used to be almost impossible to make a game, right? You had to create an engine, you had to be like a C++ badass developer, and now you can download Unity or Unreal for free, or use, you know, what you use for HTML5, for example, Pixie.js, right? And you have a wealth of tools which are free, fairly well documented, but they're still very complicated, right? A lot of people get disillusioned, they can't get to the next step, they can't achieve their creative vision, and those tools are going to allow you to do this. Right. I've been a junior, right? The junior is just, you know, drive. You want to learn, you want to grow in the role, and whether you use AI or not, that's fine. I don't think anyone is technically going to be fully replaced by AI. They're just professions that are going to disappear the same way they've been disappear since we invented work, right?
So I have the feeling that there's people who are underestimating and other people who are overestimating the speed of change. And clearly over, probably, compared to how we can see. But do you have any kind of idea around that?
Speed of change, I think there's a limiting factor, and I think it's us.
Yeah.
I don't think the AI is the limiting factor in terms of the speed of change, but I think, so I'm pretty positive about AI. I think the future is going to be glorious. I think it's going to be amazing because it's going to have so many positive impacts in so many different areas. But I think so. Medical care, that was all really interesting earlier.
Yeah.
I was saying to Tim earlier, the thing I really want it to do is to stop me being on the phone for flipping half an hour every time I phone the doctor to try and get an appointment while I'm in a queue for 30 people, you know? And I just think it's going to be a while before the infrastructure is in place to change those things that are actually pretty life-changing.
I went to a really interesting talk a few weeks ago by a guy who studies he's an expert in employment. He's from Harvard Business School, and they done a bunch of research that shows that they think that in the next 10 years, 50% of people's jobs will have been the function of the jobs will have been replaced by AI, and I think something like 80% of 20% of people's jobs. And the interesting thing that they were talking about was the difference with this compared to previous things is that this is all white collar workers, right? It's us. Previously, people compare it to the Industrial Revolution. That was typically blue collar workers, their kind of function being replaced by machines. This time, it's kind of our turn, and that's the worrying thing, right? Because it affects us personally. The thing that I'm excited about is that maybe there's a chance that it's functions that get replaced rather than people. So maybe it opens up opportunities for us to do things differently. Maybe it opens up access to jobs and ways of working to groups of people that have been completely excluded from these kinds of arenas, these kinds of workforces. Maybe it gives us a chance to kind of reset things a little bit. I definitely have days where I'm like, I'm going to learn how to be a plumber because how's AI going to replace them? But I think I think one of the interesting answers that people have is like, I can't wait for it to replace all this busy work I do, phone calls and pitch decks and reports. Like, I'm writing a report this week, and it's like the worst thing I've ever had to do. And like, there's loads of things I could be doing to deliver value to my organization that's much better than writing a report. And so maybe there's a world where we get to do all those things instead of. You look so unconvinced.
Because, like, guys, remember Midjourney 2, 3, 4, 5, and ChatGPT 3.5, 4, and that was in 6 months. And it's not that it stopped. They intentionally stopped instead of accelerating, because it was a bunch of people saying, guys, we're going too fast. And connected to this, there's a few different topics that we might touch. The apocalyptic kind of chat of, we're going to die. No, not necessarily. But there's the regulatory framework side, which is quite interesting. And you probably have seen it that OpenAI a couple of weeks ago announced that their first office to open in Europe would be in London, and that was like a stick in somewhere to Macron, because he was like pitching very, very hard to have OpenAI opening in France, but they're actually opening in UK because of basically two reasons. Reason number one, we have talents. We are in London with the Google DeepMind. They're already here, so it's cool. It's a cool place to be for this business. Reason number two, we have less regulations, and I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing. And anyone you want to take this?
Yeah, so I think it's not a question of blue collar, white collar. Like, if we hit AGI, which we're going to, and we're going to sooner than we think, because it is exponentially growing, when we're having emergent features of intelligence appearing unpredictably as those models grow faster. And robotics are increasing every day. It's going to replace white collar workers. It's going to replace blue collar workers, definitely, within 10, 20 years. It's a case of how we manage that process. Realistically, it's how, in the next couple of years, it's going to be all productivity boosted. It's going to be all fun and great for all of us, because we can do more of the stuff that we want to do. But eventually, we'll get to the point where it can replace us physically and mentally. What it's going to take really is thinking about society and how we build the systems of wealth distribution, managing assets and property, how we manage all of those things. That's really going to shape society over the next 10 years, I think.
Can I just add to that? Yeah. So sorry, I think there's a way more fundamental underlying question that it's like, do you want to work forever? Like, do you like working? Does work really like make you want to get out of bed? Like, imagine if we didn't have to work. And I'm already saying this, like, AI can like, you know, like, tell you about my OnlyFans page, right? Because this was a test about like side hustles, right? Because I was like, okay, side hustle. I wonder if I can like, you know, see if I can do a side hustle with some generative AI that can make me some images. Okay, so what I was selling, there was a massive meme about like foot pics. So obviously I got like really bad foot pics, put them on OnlyFans and got 4 subscribers, which were paying me like, I think like $12 each per month. I stopped after 3 months because I didn't want to like, you know, sort of continue with the projects. It's weird as hell. But the point being, like, that meant like if I did scale that up, like I technically wouldn't have to work. Like, why would I would much rather not be going to work and sitting in an office and doing stuff. Imagine if I went and sat in a park or something or did something else. But my fundamental question is like, do you really want to keep working? Do you like work that much? That sucks.
How did you get decent? But
Yeah, that's the one. No. So the really cool thing about the foot pics was because they were so grotesque, it was a very small niche. So that's why we sort of like plateaued at about 4 subscribers. But what that does mean is like, that led on to another thing. Like, you know, there's surely a lot of opportunity to like sort of have micro niche content of that description, of any description. And that sounds like a really great side hustle to me. So, you know, I'd much rather be doing that. And yeah, they were really, really, really gross.
yeah, so foot pigs, slight aside. My other half's a reflexologist, so I've also tried to create foot pics in generative AI for marketing material for her. They are the stuff of nightmares. This is how I test whether the generative AI is any good from an art point of view. It's got hands down all right now, but try and type in reflexology, like reflexology treatment into Midjourney, and you get a blobby nightmare. But 4 subscribers at $12, okay.
Can we comment? Yeah. So there's I'm from the industry side, so boo, you know, not as fun as what you guys are doing. But they make stuff, right? They make airplanes, they make cars. So there's a couple of things that AI is going to have a hard time with. Certification. Like I work with Airbus, for example, and in case you don't know, well, they have the smart wrench. And when they tighten something, it's tracked, right? And these guys spent 5-10 years training. Right? These are really highly skilled jobs in industry today. Right? The reduction already happened. What you see now is core robotics, where human and robots work together. Human train robots to work autonomously, because those are very complex, very astute tasks. But certification is one. It's really hard to get anything certified where you make products which are going to be sold internationally, including phones, right? There are certifications behind it, and tomorrow, you know, today to certify autonomous being like AI when they're not predictable, right? Even today we don't understand them. We understand humans pretty well, but we really don't understand how those neural networks work, right? There's scientists actually that are kind of anthropologists of that data already because no one knows how they work, right? So people are trying to figure out that too. So the time you get to the certification for the things that are meaningful in our life, it's going to be quite a while, right? Because there's things which are bound to be easy to disrupt, but others are going to take a lot longer and might not even be worth it, right, in the end.
It's so positive here that there's that's cool. I'm actually to this note. There's I just want to read because I wanted to quote it. That there's a quite interesting newsletter called The Algorithmic Bridge, which if you haven't subscribed, it's quite interesting. It's by a guy in the US called Romero. Good stuff, and he keeps saying that attention is polarized. There either people who say we're not going to work another day or we're all going to die. So these are the two extremes. What are you saying? That there's so many much more interesting ways to die than from the acts of an AI. And he was saying there are 3 AI poetic endings, which are the big eclipse, the big brag, and the big fork. And the 3 endings are basically, the big eclipse is when they're doing something that basically we become their pets. The big brag is kind of the approach where they pat on our back and give us the solutions to the world, climate change, whatever, new physics laws and everything. And the big fork, which is probably the most sad of the three, is when they realize that we are cockroaches basically for them, and they elevate to another plane and leave us alone basically. So how do you see?
I would love to propose like the fourth, and I think it's going to be called the big boring. AI is just going to be boring, and it's going to be inside everything that we do. It's going to be like in a Siri, it's going to be in the fridge, it's going to be in your toaster. Like it's just going to be a thing. Like it's not. And it's like, and it's not going to be like smart enough to be like, I'm going to destroy Omar's crumpets. Like it doesn't care. I think it's going to be so boring. And if you imagine like the people who are making and doing stuff in this space, like they're already making it boring. You look at like what's happening in the open source community, and then compare it to like what Adobe and people like, is it Omniverse that Nvidia did? Like that's boring as hell. Like that's like so boring. No one's really like. It's just going to become dull as hell, and that's going to be the next time like someone comes up with the next NFT. Like, sorry, boring as hell.
We had this conversation today about what was the name of the first of the three?
Big eclipse.
Yeah, the big eclipse. Like, so the plan is just to become cute, right? Like, my plan is I'm just going to become cute. Like, I'll become the cat video equivalent to AI. So, like, maybe I'll jump at a cucumber, or the AI will be like, oh, look, he's burning fossil fuels again. That silly thing. Let's just put him on the right track. Right? That's my plan. Like, if it doesn't work, I'll just be cute and it'll be okay.
But we've not discussed singularity. We've not discussed us merging with AI yet, if we're talking on that scale. But I'm kind of more on the big boring scale. I think this is going to be a set of productivity tools that potentially brings about much higher productivity and abundance, and a much better understanding of our place in the world, and hopefully more equality across everyone. So I'm head of education. So I think it's totally going to revolutionize education and democratize it and allow everyone to be able to get the education that interests them, which I think will be super exciting to be able to go, I'm interested in that thing. I'd like to learn about it. And I can. I don't have to go to university. I can find out about it by an AI teaching me, and it's going to be endlessly patient with the fact that I don't understand stuff. And it'll teach me really well. And that's going to be fantastic, because we're going to all need new jobs, and it can help train us. So I think there's a lot of positive here. Our jobs will change, but help is on hand to allow us to understand what our new job will be. I don't think I'm going to give up work.
And come and hang out with me. We'll watch Omnibuses of Columbo. It'll be fun.
Man, we can get AI-generated Columbo episodes that never existed.
Right?
Oh, okay, I'm there.
Will there be crumpets?
There will be crumpets. Plenty of Marmite or tunes.
Sorry, I won't be the agent of doom and gloom. I know you're trying to. That it's not gonna happen. Democratization, I'll use that word again, right? I'm a product of a privilege. I grew up in Paris in a middle-class family. I was fortunate enough to move to New York when I was 21. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to join the .com bandwagon, then be there for the mobile revolution, right? Most people have going to miss those opportunities because they're not in the right centers. You said they're coming to London. If you're not in London right now, you don't have access to the same opportunities as many people around the globe. So I think if we can democratize that, that'll be great, because there's talent and genius everywhere, and I don't think we've tapped most of it today. And hopefully those tools are going to make that possible for them to start a startup in the middle of nowhere and have the resources that we have here in this fantastic city.
Good. And on this note, thank you so much, guys. We're wrapping this up. Give another big hand to Ryan.